So my name's Hunter Daly and I'm from London in the UK. So the ecotype that I was assigned in the report was Indigenous justice. I think that while small action has a role to play, especially in an average citizen's life of individual actions that mean something to them, I think that's really important to empower people. I think just in my case, I think about those small things that I encourage myself or friends and family to do, such as their modes, their transport decisions, and their, these tiny things like recycling. But I think what we're noticing in the climate movement is more voices alerting us to the fact that individual actions can be manipulated as a way of convincing individuals that that's all that needs to happen, and distracting from the big institutional changes that really need to happen. But I do believe in big scale action, however politically difficult that is. I think that technology's got a really important role, but it has to be absolutely questioned at every turn. What we're seeing, especially in the net zero debate, is like a huge focus on techno fixes, in the idea of technological salvation. And that is beginning to seed to become something that is not going to be possible. And yet it's so entrenched in debates. I'm just a bit more curious, I think, about what indigenous forms of knowledge have to teach us. How do we bring these sort of old ways of being and knowledge about our place in the world, our place in the universe, but without falling into the trap of thinking we can solve everything, not through our behavior change, but through things we make. Yeah. So we can't go backwards, but we can't pretend like we're going to go all the way into the future and save ourselves. There was a place here during the lockdown that I used to go to a lot behind my house here, that was full of trees, and I just sit there and do nothing and be with my dogs, and very bucolic, very lucky to be able to just relax. And then I think about, I can't remember when it was, maybe like last summer, they started fencing it all up, and they started moving bulldozers in, and they concreted the whole area. They knocked down huge trees, but it was there to build homes. So at the same time, I wasn't extreme and Puritan about it. Like, how could you destroy those grasses? Because where does my house sit on? At some point in the past, there was someone that walked through a field that this house was once on, or a forest. So sometimes these don't have answers to these questions. I take action through aiding climate activists, grassroots climate activist groups. I find that these groups to be a source of inspiration to my life, in fact, because there's young people in that are just so determined. So I kind of help them make action, and that helps me. I was super motivated to get into film and TV, obsessed with it. And but I knew that at some point in that time, I would find something that I was motivated enough to go and do something about. And that happens to be climate now. And one of these big pivotal moments for me was when I traveled a lot, working as a cinematographer in the film and TV industry. And I went to South Africa in 2019, and we were constantly told about not going out alone at night and not going to certain areas, and definitely don't break down on the motorway, but just definitely don't break down. And I understood this when I drove back to the airport one day, because throughout, I can't remember how many hundreds of meters were people just living in shacks, metal shacks. That was like, and what I was doing there was a perfume commercial. And the second time was a music video for an international artist. And everyone had flown from around the world to this beautiful part of the world. I feel like it's absolutely critical. I feel like it's an absolute duty of mine now, and just a responsibility of mine to use such a life as I have to just point these things out and do what I can.